Well, go on, everybody. Lennox here from Simple 123 Trader. This is the Playbook Weekly Outlook for June 13th to 18th. Hope everybody's doing well and are safe. We can take a look at what's setting up this week in the major futures for the U.S. dollar index, the U.S. indices, and also the major currencies. Starting off with Australian dollar on the weekly time frame. And again, I will just go over what I am seeing and maybe try to explain why I see what I see. First of all, um, the the charts, you can see I'm using no indicators whatsoever on these charts. So I'm basically basing my analysis on what has transpired in the past to um, predict what should occur or what we expect to occur in the future. So based on previous chart patterns, um, we were basically pattern recognition technicians and analysts, and we look at a certain structure in the charts to discern and predict what the future uh, evolving pattern will, how that evolving pattern will play out. So on the Australian dollar, as I've been calling for weeks now, and showing that we have a head and shoulders pattern, which is, of course, one of the primary patterns that everybody knows about and so forth. But in in that pattern, there are many other patterns that, when taken all together, explain and help predict based on the probabilities and so forth of where price and the structure and the chart will play out and move to. So seeing the head and shoulders pattern is just one piece of it. So we can draw a line and say, okay, we expect price to continue moving down. And of course, this can take a while to unfold. And but that's because we're on the weekly time frame, so we can say that that's what is going to happen. On the daily time frame, when we come to this level, again, we can see the head and shoulders pattern, and it's playing out and as it should at this point. Now, because it's been very choppy, and you can see it's been a very choppy affair along this level of the pattern. And what we're seeing here is, again, a breakdown of the pattern, and the expectation now is that we should see continued movement downwards. Okay, are we correct? Only time will tell. Okay, so what we can do is to, based on probability, say, okay, we have, based on what we're seeing here, there are a couple of scenarios. Price can either move up and break this current level and continue up again, okay, or price can continue down and break this level and go to the downside. Which one will it be? Well, we can't say for certainty from this level on the daily, but we can, if we drop down to the next level, to the 4 hour time frame, we can then get a better look at what's going on and say, okay, now we see what's going on. We can more with more certainty say, okay, based on what we're seeing here, we would expect price to break down one more time to this level. So it's very difficult from a higher time frame to gauge, of course, the finer movements, but on the higher time frames, you can gauge the overall trend and direction. So what I'm seeing here is a continued movement that was basically sideways in here. Now we're looking to, of course, in the short term, we could push back up for a little bit, but overall we should be pushing back down. So weakness in the Aussie dollar for the first part of the opening sessions here, which is today. We're now into the time frame. It's like 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. So we can expect maybe a little bit of strength, very short term, but continued weakness going into the longer term. So that's kind of how I break down the chart. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to start off on the monthly time frame. So what I'm seeing now, if I go from the monthly time frame, it was a continued move to the downside. We were inside of a very tight, and when I say tight, we're talking over years. This alone, this movement here alone took over 2 years to transpire. So it's been moving in that trend, however, all that time. So there's the movement. Now we've pushed up and out, and right now we're inside of an area where we're kind of just going sideways. What is the overall trend for this? The overall trend right now is still to the upside at this moment in time on the monthly, but we're at a very critical point of resistance all the way across, and we could see some volatility in here. We could see a breakdown first, but overall, this should continue to the upside. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm seeing overall on this. So dropping back down to the weekly time frame now. Now we see that whole movement. So that whole movement has taken us something to this effect, and now we're up at this level. So this is where we're at right now inside of this previous resistance area, and looking to see, okay, where is this going to go over the course of this week, and dropping to the daily. Yes, we could get a little bit of strength in the short term, but it looks more like we're going to probably come back down longer term over the week. All right, so that's a look at the Australian dollar. All right, now the key to this, of course, is the US dollar. So I'm going to go to the US dollar here first on the monthly. US dollar has been in quite a move to the downside, but we're right back down to a support area, but it still looks like there's more room for this to fall. So the overall structure I'm seeing here for this move is now at this critical juncture where we're at a support. We could expect a bounce back up into this area in the long term. This is on the monthly. So on the long term, I'm talking again years. This could take years to do that. Okay, so on the weekly time frame, we have been in quite a move to the downside, and I'm seeing further weakness. Right now, it's in in some strength, so we have to look at it in that way and see that, okay, we've had quite a move down, and it's trying very hard to push back up, but I think that overall it's going to be short-lived, and price will continue to the downside, back down to support. All right, so that's kind of what I'm seeing. Let's go. I'm going to go down to a little lower to the 4-hour, and we look at this, and you can see this level, we're in a very choppy situation. So you can see how very volatile this move has been, and we can expect further strength, but albeit short-term strength at the beginning of this session, and then further weakness to come. All right, so that's what I'm seeing overall with US dollar. So if that holds out, then the short term for the Aussie would mean further upside if the US or downside first, and then if the US dollar movement to the upside would create downside movements in the Aussie, downside movements in the euro, downside movement in the British pound, and the New Zealand dollar as well against the US dollar. Okay. It would also produce strength in the USD CAD, USD Swiss, USD Japanese yen against with the US dollar. All right, so I hope that's making sense. All right, so let me go on and let's take a look at Bitcoin. So here's Bitcoin on the monthly, quite the move. Let's take a look at it on the weekly. We see this a little easier. Okay, so we've reached again a very critical portion in this move back down, and you can see we've dropped down quite a bit, and it's trying very hard now to push back up. I think this is going to be short-lived, and we're going to see continued weakness to come. So we have this big move, this big drop, but we're now again at a very critical juncture with this, and we've been chopping around, and I would expect further movements down. Okay, this is going to take a while to play out. However, we dropped to the 4-hour, we'll see this much clearer. So you can see we're inside this channel. We've been going up and down, and I would expect price to waver and continue to the downside. Now, this can also move higher up. It can come up to this area before it turns, but in either case, it might be some any short-term strength will mean good setups for long-term gains to the south, to the downside. All right. Okay, let's take a look at crude oil on the monthly. Very strong crude oil. You can see, as I've been talking about for weeks, crude oil looks very strong, like we're going to push and break through this level and continue up into a very heated, hot summer of volatility and more strength in oil as everybody gets their legs and starts to want to travel around and so forth. So this is what's going to be happening with crude oil. It's going to be very strong as it continues. You can see the strength in it is very real, and I don't see anything stopping this from its move at this point. So lots of strength in crude oil going into summer time here. Okay, now we look at the Canadian dollar. I'll go to the weekly. It's taken a little turn to the downside. You can see that right now, and so we could see further down moves in the Canadian dollar right there. So that's totally possible for Canadian dollar weakness going into this week. We looked at US dollar. Let's take a look at the euro. We would expect the euro to go the opposite way of the US dollar. So again, if we look at the US dollar on the daily, we're looking for a little bit of strength at first, but then further weakness. So then we would be looking at, for the euro, a little bit of weakness short term before we turn around and continue back up. Okay, and we look at the Swiss franc. Swiss franc looks pretty strong here on the daily. So I would give this, we could get a little bit of weakness at first, but we will continue pushing to the upside for Swiss franc going into this week. For gold, gold is also right now looking pretty strong overall. It's taken a little bit of a break, a retrace, but I would expect this not to go too far, and we'd see strength coming back again later on, maybe by midweek. Okay, so Japanese yen looking very weak, so I would expect that to continue being weak, just like the US dollar. So this is in line with what the US dollar is doing. So weakness in Japanese yen. We look at the New Zealand dollar, and the New Zealand dollar will be similar to Aussie, and we'll be looking for some weakness there as well, short term. Mexican peso. If I'm just going to go a little higher with Mexican peso, so you can see it's reached it had reached a critical portion here where it was hitting resistance, and now it's pushing back and retracing all that move that it has done, and that's what's happening right now. So we're retracing this entire move, and we would expect price to come back down into this area. So weakness in the Mexican peso. Now this is the British pound, like I talked about earlier. So the British pound has reached up a zenith as well, and it looks like we could have one more push to the upside. That's totally possible. So in the short term, A little bit of resistance. We're right there. You can see we're just going sideways. So we have some resistance, but I could see this pushing back to the upside on US dollar weakness, which is what we're expecting. So a little bit of weakness here first, and then we get some strength going back one more time to the upside for the British pound. All right, silver. Okay, silver is like gold, looking this similar, very strong, but we're also at a critical juncture. And you can see that that is so. It's very, very strong resistance area, but it looks like it wants to push through. And this could take a little bit of time, but it looks very strong to the upside for silver and gold to continue its onslaught to the upside. So I'm not going to bet against it. I'm going to we could get a little more downside short term, but I think overall we're going to be pushing to the upside. Okay, the US 2000, which is the Russell 2000. Last week I called for assault on the previous highs, and we reached right up there, very, very close, as you can see. So we got into some resistance area right there. I expect this to break through this week. Oh, we could see a little further sideways, but I expect that to break to new highs in the coming week. We look at US 30, same type of thing. We're getting a little, we hit resistance, a little bit of a pullback, but I see further continuance of this move to the upside, break into new levels, new highs, new records going into this week. The US 500, this is the S&P 500. Right, the same type of scenario, but this one doesn't have much of a lag. It just looks very strong. It's breaking through the new highs already, and I can see this continuing up into this week. And also the technology group, the US tech, also, like I said last week, would be assaulting these previous highs, and it's done exactly that. And we are pushing to these new highs. Now we're sitting at resistance, so you have to be expecting some sideways movement. So that's totally possible as it tries to break through to new highs again, and it's right there. It's you can see we're neck and neck with what previous highs. So I would expect a further onslaught and a break to new highs. However, that could be short-lived. Okay, so because what I'm seeing overall in our structure is that we're very, very close to that peak. So this could be a short-lived move to the upside for U.S. Technology Group. All right, so that's what I'm seeing setting up for this week. I hope everything I've explained is understandable. Profitable trading to everyone. Be safe. We're done now. Thank you.